Okay, since it's 3:30, we can get started. Welcome to CDTC's New Visions virtual learning series. Today's webinar is titled Moving Towards Zero: Approaches for Improving Safety. The webinar has also been approved for AICP credits. So if you are AICP, this webinar qualifies for 1 CM credit. So today's webinar will be focused on CDTC's safety strategies and issues in the Capital Region. It will begin with an introduction and overview of what New Visions 2050 is and what it says about safety. Sandy Misiewicz from CDTC will talk about the safety strategies and principles. What are the major issues? How is CDTC helping to build a safer system? And Mark Pyskadlo from New York State Department of Transportation, Region 1, will talk about New York State's safety plans and how they're implementing them. And then Sandy will wrap things up on CDTC safety strategy, and we'll close with a discussion and questions. We do ask that if you have questions throughout the webinar that you use the chat or the question function, and we will answer them at the end. So what is New Visions 2050? New Visions, the long-range transportation plan for the region, is a blueprint for regional transportation that reflects a shared vision for the future. It's a 30-year plan to guide prioritization and funding of investment decisions. It's developed collaboratively with transportation providers, local governments, state agencies, the private sector, and the public. And for those that are not familiar with the Capital District Transportation Committee, CDTC is a Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, which is a transportation policy making and planning organization that allocates federal transportation funding resources. It includes transportation organizations like the State Department of Transportation, the Capital District Transit Authority, the Albany Airport, the Port of Albany, the Thruway, and our partners at the Regional Planning Commission. Representatives from each of the counties, Albany, Rensselaer, Schenectady, and Saratoga, are represented, as well as all of our cities and a number of towns. So what's in the New Visions 2050 plan? There are a number of elements and pieces. If you are going to looking for a summary or just a quick overview of the plan, the executive summary really outlines what CDTC's philosophy on transportation planning is and what the major goals and principles are. But there's also a system performance report, there's a public participation plan, and there are 11 separate technical area papers, from transit to safety to infrastructure conditions. There's 11 different papers that you can review that will give more technical information and details on different modes and programs. There's also a financial plan and, of course, a glossary of terms and abbreviations. So because transportation funding can be used to address a variety of needs, and transportation affects everyone, we need good roads and bridges to drive on, reliable buses to ride on, and more sidewalks, trails and bike lanes to walk or bike to access local amenities and provide affordable options for everyone. New Visions 2050 lays out principles for holistic transportation and regional planning in the region so that we can continue to develop a multimodal system that acknowledges all the ways the transportation system impacts your daily life. So the centerpiece of the New Visions plan are the 15 planning and investment principles. They're directly related to criteria that we use to evaluate and propose projects and prioritize them for federal funding. They were developed and proposed over time by New Vision's task forces and by stakeholders in the region, and these principles influence the types of tasks and initiatives CDTC initiates and supports. Today, we're going to be focusing on invest in safety. So just a brief snapshot of the capital region to start us off. We are a unique region. We're multinodal. We're a multinodal area that includes 8 cities and a number of unique towns and villages. We're connected by a series of highways and arterials, but also an economy. And the region is situated at the crossroads of 2 major interstates, I-90 and I-87, and 2 rivers, the Mohawk and Hudson. There are diverse communities from vibrant urban centers to rural agricultural lands and villages, which are attractive destinations for visitors due to the number of social, cultural, and recreational opportunities they have created. We're the home of a state capital, and we enjoy a stable economy bolstered by the large state government workforce, but there's also a good number of colleges and universities, large medical institutions. But despite these advantages and consistent development, the region has experienced little population growth, and the population isn't projected to significantly increase. But we still have changing needs, an aging population, smaller families, and less young drivers that we need to plan for and build a system to serve. So the major policies and best practices proposed in New Vision's 2050 include maintaining a state of good repair, congestion management, implementing complete streets, supporting transit-oriented development or smart growth, access management, safe systems and Vision Zero policies, which we'll hear more about today, encouraging and being in compliance with the Americans with Disability Act, and improving and expanding public participation. So you might be wondering what impact New Vision's 2050 could have, what impact have previous long-range plans had. These are just a sample of some major projects that have been completed in the region that are a result of New Vision's long-range plans. They include our bus rapid transit system that's continuing to expand, the Albany County Rail Trail, the I-787 Hudson River Corridor Study, the Cows Corners Roundabout, the I-87 Exit 3 Airport Connector, a number of other trails, bridges, ongoing paving and maintenance projects, and other regionally significant projects. So transportation costs are increasing faster than available funding, and our multimodal approach prioritizes projects that address multiple needs. For example, a road diet or a project that reduces the number of lanes can improve safety for drivers, people crossing the street, and people bicycling on the street. And it can also move traffic more efficiently and reliably while improving the look and feel of a corridor, which can benefit businesses there. So New Vision's 2050 manages this decreasing amount of funds while also improving quality of life and addressing multiple issues in the transportation system. So right now we are in the implementation stage of New Vision's 2050. It was adopted in September 2020, and we're moving forward by initiating tasks in our Unified Work Program, which is 2 years of tasks and budget of all of CDTC's initiatives, as well as the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP. This is a 5-year capital program, and programming of the TIP is anticipated to happen in the near future. We also have are continuing our virtual learning series. The next webinar is scheduled for April 20th and will be on performance measures. If you would like a virtual training tailored for your planning board, zoning board, town board, or city council, you can fill out a request on the CDTC website or contact me. We would be happy to schedule something. And now I'm going to pass it over to Sandy.
Great, thanks, Jen. Let me get my screen. Jen, it says I'm disabled from sharing.
You should be.
I'm not able to share.
You should be now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you, Jen, for putting this together. Hopefully you can see my screen. Trying to move the box around. Again, my name is Sandy Misiewicz. I'm a principal transportation planner with the Capital District Transportation Committee, and we're going to share a bit today about the region's approach to moving towards zero and looking at state, regional, and even some local approaches to how we can work together to improve safety. To provide a little context to start us off with, we need to kind of get on the same page with what our crash data is saying. So a little bit about the regional crash data. Most of the images, or the data I should say, that I'm sharing today are for the time period between 2015 and 2019. Most of the data comes from the New York State DOT Accident Location Information System, which is a crash database available to state and local government partners that allows us to access the crash data. And what these pie charts show is on the left-hand side, fatal and all injury crashes and the major crash types. As you can see, for that large group of crashes, which is the vast majority of crashes, we have a lot of property damage crashes, but we're not considering them for the purposes of this today. But over 71% are motor vehicle, with 17% fixed object, and close to 7% pedestrian. When you remove the less serious injuries and you focus on the most severe injury crashes with the fatal, you see that pie chart change such that fixed object significantly increases for our 4-county region, as do the pedestrian crashes. So you can immediately see the severity change when you look at the different types of crashes that are occurring. And when you isolate fatal crashes alone, you see it change again. So most of our fatal crashes are related to pedestrians, fixed objects, and motor vehicle against a motor vehicle type scenario. So keep that in mind as we work through the conversation today, because those three emphasis areas, if you will, are a major part of our safety program. When you look at where they're occurring at a high level, the roadway systems involving fatal and all injury crashes, as well as when you take out those less severe injury crashes and you focus on the serious injury crashes, it's about split. It's about 50%, a little over 50% on the state system. And then the local roads, county, city, town, and a few other entities share the remaining 50%. So it's a pretty split 50-50 for the most severe types of crashes, resulting in with the worst outcomes on the road system. In terms of the manner of collision, when you look again, fatal and all injury crashes, 26% are rear end, and close to 17% are right angle, 6% are left turn. There's a large category of other, which was difficult for, again, because this is police reported data. You know, a lot of times they don't have the information for some of the lesser severe crashes. They're going off of what they're observing on the roadway or what they're hearing from the individuals involved. They may not be able to determine the cause, or at least the manner of collision. But when you pull out the less serious injury crashes from the data, you see a change. where again, because it's some people are not able to speak about what happened, there's more folks that go into that other category. But rear ends and right angles certainly are the most common manner of collision resulting in a fatal or serious injury. In terms of the human factors that contribute to crashes, particularly the fatal and injury crashes, following too closely, driver inattention, failure to yield right away, improper passing and lane use, and then unsafe speed are the top. As you can see, there's other errors, pedestrian error, alcohol involvement, traffic control device disregard. All of these human factors play a part in what happens on the roadway system. Now, this map in and of itself is not particularly meaningful, but I just wanted to share at the highest level, what the distribution of crashes were on a local road system, because those of you who know our region well can quickly identify certain roads. Some of them are interstates, which you expect because of the high volume of traffic, that there would be a larger number of crashes, and certainly in a denser part of the region with a lot of roads, you'd expect that as well. But when you get out to the more rural areas, you start to see some major state routes, some county routes that kind of pop up in the overall data. When you break that down, going back to those major categories I talked about earlier, looking at fixed object crashes, they tend to be distributed widely throughout the region. This phenomenon of someone leaving the lane and hitting an object can occur anywhere, but it tends to happen more with fatal and injury crashes in sort of the rural parts of our region. When you look at pedestrian crashes, they tend to be very concentrated in our more urban centers, certainly our largest cities, areas of growth like in Clifton Park and Half Moon, villages like the village of Ballston Spa. So you see some more concentrated patterns when you look at pedestrian crashes. And when you look at bicycle crashes as well, for again, the fatal and injury type, you see a similar pattern to the pedestrians, tend to be concentrated in the more urban areas, some of the suburban towns that may be having more users on the roadway network. But you definitely see some consistent patterns between the pedestrian and bicycle crashes. So one of the things that happened in 2020, aside from the fact I wasn't able to pull together the 2020 data this year, obviously was COVID. One of the things that COVID-19 did, obviously, was to significantly drop our traffic and our road users for a good part of the year. And as a result, we had changes in sort of crashes as well as tickets. But it wasn't all good news. Throughout the country, during the COVID crisis, the most aggressive drivers, we'll call them, tended to be on the roadway, resulting in an actual increase in fatal crashes throughout the country in 2020. I don't know yet whether that has been true for our 4 counties, but I do know for New York State as a whole, the number of fatal crashes did increase in 2020. But what this graph is showing you is the changes in the crash reported data throughout 2020, which is represented by the red line. And you can clearly see the dip during the month of April when most folks were in lockdown and how it has recovered since, but it's still not quite back to the normal pattern. And we think this is partly to do with state police and other law enforcement agencies being involved in sort of the COVID response side of things. Managing traffic and providing services to the vaccination centers and the testing facilities. And here you see the ticket data for New York State. Again, similar pattern when we had the drop in traffic in March and April, ticketing went away. And again, the law enforcement officials needed to protect themselves from COVID as well. So the incentive to conduct speed enforcement wasn't the top priority. It has since come back, and we'll see what that means in the future through 2021 if sort of the law enforcement side of things returns to a more normal pattern. But as you can see, with the reduced law enforcement involvement, it just created a situation with wide open roads, limited enforcement, that some of our more aggressive drivers were able to utilize the roadway system. And obviously, as we can see, and we will see in the crash data, it had an impact. So New Visions 2050, as Jen introduced, has safety as a key element to the transportation plan. We believe it's possible that technology in 2050 will greatly contribute to reducing, if not eliminating, fatalities and serious injuries. But the region can't wait for these technologies that might be, many, many years into the future to become widely available. So instead, we support changes in the safety culture to design safe streets, encourage safe transportation system user behavior, and to improve the security of the system for everyone who uses it. So we proposed and have as the main safety element of the plan this notion of moving the region towards zero, meaning to eliminate transportation-related deaths and serious injuries by 2050. We can do that by creating that travel environment that reduces risks, that considers the community context. We will evaluate and monitor safety data to look at not only what's happening in the crash data, but the effectiveness of the implemented countermeasures. And we're going to look for a long-term commitment from all levels of government in order to make safety truly a priority for our region. So the Safe Systems approach is one method, one tool that we will be promoting and encouraging our communities to think about in their own work. And what the Safe System approach does is essentially encourages communities and others to think about the transportation system as a true system, how road design and vehicle technology and the protection of occupants through the use of seatbelts and other technologies, all of those things have to work together, because no death or serious injury is acceptable. We know human beings make mistakes and are susceptible to injury. There's the proactive approaches, which I think the Safe Systems approach really gets into, versus the more traditional approaches, which is a reactive approach. You wait for a pattern of crashes to occur before you address an area. And it really is a shared responsibility that is driven by data. And all of these things working together can create that culture of safety. And that really serves as the foundation for the Vision Zero strategy. The Vision Zero strategy emphasizes the elimination of all traffic fatalities and serious injuries while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. And that's all, and also on all public roads. And we have a range of communities in New York State tackling and taking on this approach. New York City being sort of our primary community, not only here in New York State, but around the country, that has embraced the Vision Zero approach. But we have our small cities like Ithaca have also embraced the Vision Zero approach. And a lot of it has to do with promoting safe streets and safe speeds, along with safe vehicles and safe people through safe driving behaviors. And I think a lot of communities are very interested in having more flexibility in how they post their speed limits. For cities in New York State right now, it's legislated that the speed limit be posted at 30 miles per hour with a few exceptions. But I know there's a lot of communities who are interested in changing that. New York City was able to successfully get approval from the state legislature to drop to a 25 mile per hour speed limit. I think other communities are interested in that. And the city of Ithaca is certainly one. Some things that we thought about, since New Visions is a long-range plan, is sort of the longer-term implications of some things. We've talked about automated vehicles. Recent information we have received indicates by the years 2030 to 2035, we expect to see more and more automated vehicles deployed on the roadway system. That's not all that far away when you think about it. And the proposed MUTCD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is a Federal Highway Administration guide that really provides the law essentially for traffic control devices, proposes a new section in their current update on preparing for automated vehicles for local governments. And it doesn't set any standards yet, but it gives some food for thought, I'll call it, for how communities need to prepare, things like making sure their lines are striped clearly on the roadway, that their signage is up to requirements, these sorts of things. Automated enforcement is something that's currently being used in the city of Albany for the red light running camera program. There could be more of that in the future. We know that in New York City, they have approval to use school zone speed cameras. I think other communities are interested in both of these things. Again, these require state legislation to allow for them in areas throughout the state, but I think there could be more interest in that in the future. Marijuana legalization is a theme that we've talked about over the last few years here in New York State as a whole. It's possible it might be, it's being considered by the state legislature again. If it should pass, and we have recreational marijuana law here in New York, the impaired driving is what is of critical importance to traffic safety. For while we have a roadside test for alcohol, we do not have the same thing yet for marijuana. Other states have faced that issue, and it's something that we'll have to do a lot of education to our communities and our drivers to help them to understand how marijuana impacts them and their driving abilities. And we've recently legislated here in New York e-bikes and e-scooters. We're going to see more and more of these types of micro-mobility options on the roadway system and how we design for them and make sure that not only are they operated safely by those using them, but that drivers and other users of the roadway network understand them and respect them on the roadway system as well. All of this is really sort of reinforced at the federal level by the FAST Act. And I just see a typo. It should be shouldn't be 2105, it should be 2015. Sorry about that. But the FAST Act is reinforce the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is the federal program devoted to safety. And it's more than just a fund source. It really is a programmatic approach to reducing fatalities and injuries on all public roads. And that's the data side of things. The HSIP program also focuses on identifying our most critical needs, and that's the planning side of things. And there's a number of reporting requirements. The state's required to develop a strategic highway safety plan, which we have integrated into our new visions plan. There's a Highway Safety Improvement Program annual report and performance measures. The Strategic Highway Safety Plan is really the umbrella document for all things safety here in New York State. It's coordinated by NYSDOT and approved by FHWA. It involves all the E's of safety and includes infrastructure and behavioral countermeasures. And it feeds into the Highway Safety Plan of the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, which Governor's Traffic Safety Committee works more with law enforcement and on behavioral programs and educational type work. In addition to that plan, as I mentioned, the state DOT has the Highway Safety Improvement Program federal fund source for the infrastructure side of the equation. And all of those things work together throughout the state to develop annual safety targets for fatalities, rate of fatalities, and serious injuries, as well as 2 additional ones for non-motorized and for the rate of serious injuries. And just to talk about the safety performance management, so we do, as an MPO, a Metropolitan Planning Organization, we do track the performance of our transportation system with respect to safety, as does the state of New York. This data-driven investment and policy decision-making process helps us to carry out the Highway Safety Improvement Program, again, to reduce, with the goal of reducing fatalities and serious injuries on all public roads. The five safety performance measures, I'll show you the data in a second, but NYSDOT and CDTC establish and report those targets, and there's a significant progress criterion, which when you look at New York State's data for 2019, for the 5 safety performance measures, the target NYSDOT set in 2019 is in the first column, along with the percent reduction, which is based off of a rolling average of crashes over a couple of years of data. And then we have the actual rolling average that we actually saw on the roadway network. And what all of this really means is that for these 5 safety performance measures in 2019, New York State as a whole met 3 of the 5. So in essence, we did not make significant progress under the definition the Federal Highway Administration uses to set our performance measures. So the point here is that we have more work to do as a state. How that applies to the capital region, this is basically the same analysis, just focusing on the 4-county area. Because CDTC adopted NYSDOT's reduction targets, we use those same percentages for the comparison, and the end result is that for a number of fatalities and the rate of fatalities, we met and in fact exceeded the targets, but for the other 3, we did not. So again, there is more work to do in the region, and we'll continue to talk more about that in the coming months and years. So at this point, I wanted to set that stage, and I will turn it over to Mark, who will talk about some of the work being done at NYSDOT.
And you might have to make Mark a host so that he can share his screen.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I thought usually it lets everyone share their screen.
Let's see. You should be able to do it now, Mark.
Well, do I have to share a screen, or can I just use the video for?
There's a share screen icon at the bottom of the Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
All right. I can't tell what I'm sharing.
Oh, it looks like you're on the your internet browser. If you reshare it, you just select the screen where your PowerPoint is.
Okay. I don't necessarily have a PowerPoint. I've got some screens I want to share, but
If you open those screens first and then share, you should be able to toggle between those.
okay. Well, I'll start sharing. I still can't tell what I'm sharing. I am not familiar with Zoom, in case you can't tell. We use WebEx. So what I wanted to talk about was the state safety programs. What's on the screen there, Sandy? Can you tell?
Yes, you have the comprehensive asset management map up.
Okay, great. Well, first I wanted to talk about the different safety programs. Everything at DOT is essentially data-driven, as Sandy was mentioning previously. We have an Office of Traffic Safety and Mobility that there's a separate safety bureau in that office, and that's at our main office at 50 Wolf Road. I'm the regional traffic engineer for Region 1, which is the Capital District, and includes the 8 counties starting up in Essex County and going down to Greene County. We're just so lucky that we get to be roommates with our headquarters in the same building at 50 Wolf Road. But we have 4 safety initiatives, let's say, going on right now. The one that's probably the most visible is our Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. We're in the final year of that program. We're starting to focus more on traffic signals related pedestrian safety as opposed to unsignalized intersections this year. That is these are all statewide programs. I'm really only familiar with the Capital District version of it. We also have a low bridge countermeasure. And while that is primarily intended for the southern New York, closer to the city, with all the parkways, there are a few parkways in Syracuse. We do have some issues with low bridges, especially if you've been reading the Schenectady Gazette at all recently. Glen Ridge Road in the town of Glenville continues to get hit no matter how many signs we put out there. So for the most part, low bridge countermeasures, we're improving the signs on the existing bridges. And we're looking at that one bridge in Glenville as possibly putting in a laser detected system that'll detect an overhead vehicle and display. Let's say we'll put a big VMS out there that'll turn on and say, hey, you're over height, pull over. But we're still looking for the funding for that. We have to compete with all the bridges that are downstate, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to implement it out in Glenville. The third safety initiative that we are doing right now is called the Wrong Way Initiative. We're improving signage at the entrance to limited access highways, interstates, looking at pavement markings, more visible signing, one-way signing, and bringing all of our entrances up to that standard to try to prevent people from entering the highway going the wrong way. And another related one that's we're just completing now is our generator transfer switch initiative for traffic signals. We are installing a generator transfer switch on every one of our traffic signals. We started this back in Y2K, 1999, where we put some transfer switches on so we can power the signals by generator at select locations. Shortly after that, I contacted every municipality that had a signalized intersection that the state's responsible for and asked them, hey, you want a generator transfer switch on a signal in your area? We'll install it for free. You have to agree to put the generator on it. And some of the municipalities took us up on that. It saves their officer or police force from having to direct traffic in the middle of a power outage. And they can do other more important things. So what's typically happened is they send their fire department or fire police out and hook up a generator. Some of the municipalities jumped on it. Town of Colony and Gilliland said, yep, we want it on every one, and they got it. Other ones were more selective. But what we're doing now is we are proactively going out and installing generators, transfer switches on every traffic signal, and we have completed that goal. Sandy had mentioned the highway safety improvement program. That is another data-driven program that we have at DOT. One of the things that I have up on the screen here is what we call our PIL list, priority investigation location. Our main office group crunches the numbers from DMV and comes up with the locations where the crash rate is significantly higher than the statewide average for that type of road. And the image that I have up on the screen is actually all that data put into a GIS database. And I specifically pulled up Gilliland because I'm a town resident, and it was a location where we just initiated a project, and we're about to go to construction relatively shortly. But this is Route 146 Carmen Road, the exit 25 interchange with the thruway. I'll try to pull it up on Google Maps if it'll load for me. So you see these colored locations on the map. That highlights the area where the crash rate is significantly higher than the statewide rate, and it has appeared on our PIL, Priority Investigation Location List. Currently in Region 1, there's a little over 100 locations. That's in 8 counties, there's 100 locations. Our goal is to study 20% of those every year. And obviously each year the number changes, but our goal is to look at at least 20%, and we exceed that goal every year, at least in Region 1. The Carmen Road location, Route 146, was one of those locations, and we did a study, a crash study, looked at the accident rates and crash rates, and the intersection with Lydia Street had a very high number of left turn accidents. There were crashes, left turn. There was rear end crashes. The geometry of the intersection is such that Lydia Street crosses at a skew, and when opposing people were trying to make left turns from Route 146 onto Lydia Street, they could not make the turns in front of each other. They actually had to pass each other and make the lefts behind each other. It led to some overtaking and side swipe type crashes. So anyway, that project was identified, and we initiated scoping on that, I think early last year, maybe even in 2019. We looked at adding left turn lanes. I remember sitting in the scoping meeting, and they, on the board, they had the designers had, oh, we're going to put left turn lanes in here. And I said, that doesn't solve the problem. Yeah, left turn lanes would be nice capacity wise, but the traffic is still going to have to make left turns behind each other. So that idea was basically scrapped. And having been familiar with the area, I mentioned that there's a vacant pharmacy, and said, why don't we just buy that pharmacy and build a roundabout? So, well, there's a lot of going back and forth. I don't know, there might be contaminated soil, but that is how that project came to fruition. And I'm gonna go over one other one that is relatively close in proximity. It's in the town of Colony. And if you're familiar, a very successful project, probably, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, where we built the first single point urban interchange at on Interstate 87 and Route 7 to exit 6. And it did wonders for capacity and delays, reduced the delays. However, as you can see, the same map has highlighted here on Route 7 and here on Route 2, the way that's just because of the way that it's coded. The state police, or the police investigation, the agency codes the crash to the highway that it has the lower number. So for existence, Route 2, Route 7 is lower than Route 87, so they'll be coded to that number. And when we actually looked at what was happening here, the on-ramps, both northbound and southbound, have a yield condition where they meet. Let's say eastbound Route 7 is making a left to go northbound. Meanwhile, westbound Route 7 or Route 2 is making a right to go northbound, and those two traffic flows meet at a point. And the original design had a yield location. Well, that led to a pattern of sideswipe and rear end crashes there. And I had proposed, let's make an acceleration lane in each of those two ramps, so that the traffic comes in parallel and then merges like a typical merge situation. And we just found out last week that that project is going to move forward with a 2022 construction season. So just trying to walk you through how we go through identifying crash patterns, and then moving forward with implementing a project. Now that HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program, is funded for construction with federal dollars, which is a big deal for DOT. We don't want to, the state dedicated funds, or 100% state funds, is the golden money. So it's hard to come by. So if we can use federal money, the projects seem to be able to sail through a little bit easier. So those projects will be done with 80% federal money. I want to talk a little bit about safety as related to our traffic management center. Let me see if I can get back to sharing again. Okay. Back in, had to be the late 90s, trying to think when I started my DOT career, but in the late 90s, we built a traffic management center that was inside building 22 of the state office campus. That was state police headquarters at the time. And then in the early 2010s, Troop G decided to rebuild. They moved from Loudonville over to Latham, right, not too far from the Spooey. And we moved in there with them. DOT and state police occupy that same room. Hopefully I'm sharing it, but that's the operations floor of our traffic management center. And the idea of the traffic management center is that knowing that we were not going to build our way out of any capacity or safety problem per se, we were going to try to use the roads that we have more efficiently. And we do that by having the tools and the personnel to monitor the traffic and make decisions based on what they see or what they've learned. So that was in 2013. We moved to Latham, brand new building, state of the art, that big video wall. However, that video wall is now over 8 years old, and just like your PC, can't get parts for it anymore, and the technology is old, so we're actually looking to replace that starting next year. But at the TMC, they work with our help trucks. Maybe you've seen them out on the roads. It's a free service that DOT provides. The idea is that if there's a car that's either, let's say, disabled on the side of the road, that help truck will come over and either put air in their tire, give them a gallon of gas, let them use their cell phone, call a tow, maybe push them out of the way, and it's all free. The idea is to get them off the road, because when a vehicle's on the side of the road, the rubbernecking and the brake tapping that happens just propagates and creates delays for everybody on the road. So the quicker we can get them off the road, the better the traveling public is. Obviously, we have video cameras, we have variable message boards. There's sensors in the road that can detect traffic speed, and it's not for enforcement purposes. It's if we detect that traffic is going 20 miles an hour on the Northway, something is wrong, and that will lead us to then investigate. But more often than not, a 911 call will come into the TMC that the state police will answer, and they'll say, "Hey, DOT, exit 17 on the Northway, there's something going on. Can you take a look?" And that's what the cameras are used for. We're not actively looking at the video to try to determine if there's something going wrong. We will use the video to confirm, and then partner with the state police to try to address whatever situation there is at that location. I think I have a couple other shots here. That's that video screen. It can be one camera on there, or you can display 100 cameras, or have any combination in between. They put the news up there at certain times of the day, as well as the camera feeds. The desks, the DOT desks, we have 3 DOT employees, actual state employees. The rest are all consultant employees that work for DOT, but they sit in the 5 cubicles closest to the video wall, and that's by design, because the people sitting behind them are, there's one dispatcher for every zone in Troop G. They're running license plates, and they're not just dealing with traffic incidents. They may be dealing with domestic or assaults or robberies, those kind of things. And our operators therefore can't look over the shoulder. There's no information that they shouldn't be seeing. Our DOT operators have 5 screens. They monitor the radio traffic for the DOT internal radio system between our plow trucks and our maintenance people. They have dispatches with the help trucks with an automatic vehicle loader or GPS, where they know where they are, where they've been. And the help truck drivers radio in the license plate of the people that they're helping. And then there's another monitor is the actual command and control of our cameras. The other monitor is command and control of all of our roadside devices, the variable message signs, the speed detection. So That's an operational 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That is always open. That building is so hardened to power. There's so many redundant power systems there that the only thing that could probably take it down was COVID, but it didn't, and we're still up and running 24 hours a day. Another aspect that I wanted to touch on is the local municipalities and how you deal with traffic impact studies. And we see it, we're involved, if anything, on the state highway, we're involved with, but usually the lead agency through the seeker process is the local planning board or whatever municipal agency it is. And you have to, at least the way I look at it is that the consultant that does the traffic impact study for whatever project is going in, whether it's a new Walmart or a shopping center, or apartments, or whatever it's going to be, they're employed by the developer. So while they ethically are bound to look out for the interest of the regular traveling public, they know where their paycheck is coming from, and that's not a put down to them. That's just the reality of the way it is. Well, meanwhile, the Department of Transportation, our clients are the people of the state of New York, and we're doing what's best for the general public, not necessarily what's best for the developer. So a lot of the traffic impact studies we see, they obviously address level of service, capacity, those type of things, whether a traffic signal is warranted, but one of the things that we see very rarely are crash analysis, safety analysis. And that's the number one thing when DOT does an operation study, whether we're doing a speed limit study or a traffic signal study or a sign, pavement marking, whatever it may be, we look at the crash pattern. If there's a pattern of crashes that need to be addressed, that's what we want to try to address. However, when the developer is looking at, if there's a pattern of crashes at the location they're trying to put a driveway, they need to they need to address that, or at least somehow mitigate and not make it worse. Along those same lines, another thing that's not looked at frequently is sight distance. So let's say a traffic signal is not going in, but they're proposing a new driveway at a location where there wasn't one before. We need to see that the intersection sight distance is adequate. We can't be creating a crash pattern where one doesn't exist now. So those are just a few of the things that we don't see, and it just creates some back and forth between us and the developer's engineer. But if we could see those more often, it certainly would speed up the process. At least in the capital region, we have there's 8 counties. Every county has what we call a resident engineer. And the resident engineer is the report to work at the various residency, which is there's one main residency in every county. I'm just going to go with Albany County. The main residency is in Voorheesville. There's several sub-residencies. The one that's most visible is the one at exit 5 on the Northway. But there's several other sub-residencies, and every county is set up the same way. There's a main residency and then several sub-residencies. And it's basically where you'll see the big yellow plow trucks that the dump trucks work out of. But Sandy asked me to say how the residencies have a role in safety. Obviously, if they're out, there are eyes and ears most of the time. They have there's an internal radio system where they are in contact with the TMC. They can notify us if there's a tractor trailer off the road in Essex County that we have no way of knowing until somebody drives by and calls 911, which is an issue in Essex County with cell service. But in addition to that, when we so we do an operation study and find that some signing changes are needed or a speed limit change was warranted, that sign order goes to the residency. And obviously, when they're not plowing snow during the summer months, they have other responsibilities. One of which is our signing, and those folks implement all of our signing changes for us for the most part, unless there's some big project where we're going to. I guess I'll give you an example. We have an overhead sign project where we're going to go through and replace overhead signs because they're meeting their or exceeding their useful life. And that's just something that the residency can't handle, especially even the large signs on the side of the interstates, the big, green signs that are 20 feet wide and 10 feet tall. We don't have the methodology. That will be, a consultant that goes out and does that work, or a contractor. Let me just go through my notes here, see what else I wanted to mention. I have been involved in 3 pedestrian safety studies, and the 3 that come to mind are Route 5 Central Avenue was one we finished relatively recently. That was the result of that study, basically kicked off the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan statewide. The other 2 were Route 7, Hoosick Street in Troy, and then 787 in Cohoes, the state route portion of 787 north of Route 7. And that project, just 2 years ago, we redid the entire highway, where I think we spent close to $20 million. And the idea was to make it more pedestrian friendly, make it more like a boulevard. Among the things that were put in, obviously we upgraded all the pedestrian signals. We put median refuge areas, so people, if they didn't feel safe crossing both north and southbound lanes of 787, they could stop in the middle. There's a pedestrian head with a button in the center there at all 4 signalized intersections. There was the lanes were narrowed. We tried to do some traffic calming. There's curb sections put in so that people felt like it was more like a city road rather than an interstate highway through there. Trees were put in the median. We actually put in some chicanes or curves as you head north from Tibbetts. There's a long flat straightaway, and we actually put some curves in there. There's a multi-use path that goes between Dyke and Bridge on one side. The idea was to make it more pedestrian friendly, to make it appear to the driver that it was not an interstate highway. And the most significant change you're going to see out there are the speed tables or raised intersections. At all of the signalized intersections, they're actually raised. I think it's 4 inches. It'll feel like a speed hump as you drive over it, but it's a noticeable change, and that's right before the crosswalks of all the signalized intersections, and that is unique. I'm not aware of anywhere else in DOT, or at least in the state, where those were installed. It's yet to be determined. We usually wait 3 years to do an after study to see how the implementation is, but for the most part, in my experience at DOT, the world would be a better place if people actually just use the pedestrian facilities that are out there. Push the button, wait for the walk, and not try to play Frogger and try to get across the road, with live traffic. But there's 3 aspects of every project, or every when you try to implement safety. There's the educational aspect. People need to know that if they press a pedestrian button, they may have to wait 30 seconds, a minute or more before that walk light's going to come on. So there's an educational aspect of that. Enforcement. There needs to be some kind of enforcement, whether it's speed enforcement or just people jaywalking, trying to cross the road where they shouldn't be. And then the last thing is engineering. And as an engineer, we can put all the equipment out there that would make it the safest, but the pedestrians actually have to use it in order to make themselves safe. So that it's not just what can DOT do to make it better. You need to have the partner with the enforcement and the education as well. That's all I think I had, Sandy.
Great.
And stop share.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Mark.
Yeah.
So I will jump back in and bring this home. So, we touched upon some things, and Mark touched upon some things about what can local governments do and what can CDTC do to help. So I wanted to touch upon some of the programs that we have available and some of the initiatives that I'm aware of out there in our communities. Whoops. So the first one is the Local Road Safety Action Plan. So this was a plan that was developed, led by CDTC, but developed with our local government partners in the region, where we looked at about 5 years of crash data specific to city, town, village, and county-owned roads, and identified strategies and actions to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes on the local roadway system. And the reason we did this, as Mark alluded to, while the state has a pretty robust system to automatically, I'm saying automatically, but it's a regular review of high crash locations. The local system really doesn't have that. Now, granted, local government members certainly know what's going on in their communities for the most part, but we wanted to take a data-driven approach to this to support local government's efforts to access some of the federal funding that's available for safety. And the emphasis areas that we identified are consistent with what is in the New York State Strategic Highway Safety Plan, which are intersections, roadway user behavior, age-related, meaning younger drivers, those under the age of 20, and older drivers, those largely over the age of 65. Vulnerable users, which includes our pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists. Those leaving the lane in the, those fixed object crashes we talked about earlier, and then the speed. And as you can see, when you look at the 4-county area, each county sort of has a different pattern, if you will, of where those emphasis areas are more of an issue. So in Albany County, you see the road user behavior, the intersections, and our vulnerable users being more prevalent. But when you go to Saratoga County, you see the road user behavior, age, a lot more older drivers in Saratoga County, and lane departures there. So, you do see a different distribution throughout the region. Some of the things we learned through that process, there are a number of ways a local government can address the high frequency sites. You can use your maintenance forces to go out and address, maybe there's improper signage, maybe there's site distance issues, trees and other things in the way. So there's some basic things that can be done through the maintenance programs at the local level. You can also incorporate safety when you're planning for any kind of a project, whether that's a transportation project or a development project. As Mark's mentioned, development mitigation is a really important tool to implementing some safety improvements where you have issues. And the other thing that we noticed in our review is that when we looked back at some of the older crash data in our analysis, is some of those sites have already been addressed. There is a little bit of a time lag for when crash data becomes fully available. So, in some cases where things could be addressed easily, they already were. But, certainly the regional versus the site look isn't the same. You really do have to look at that local level to get a good snapshot of what's going on. We do think systemic approaches are really best for local roads. There's not a lot of locations where you have a very, very high frequency of crashes on locally owned roads. So, systemically addressing pedestrians through implementing crosswalks, for lane departures, addressing signage. These are the kinds of things that you can do on a system level rather than a site-by-site level as they occur. But we did find a gap in the local road data, meaning the characteristics of the roadways themselves. We still need to gather some of the traffic volume and other roadway characteristic data to really do a full analysis using data-driven approaches. So some of the programs that CDTC has available to local governments for safety, on the education side and the encouragement side, we have the Capital Coexist, which we now referring to as 2.0. We updated this for 2021 to expand. It used to be focused more on bicyclist and pedestrian safety, but now it's including a whole range of safety initiatives based on those emphasis areas we identified in the Local Road Safety Action Plan. So some expanded eligibility included projects such as a motorcycle safety skills training, younger driver safety education programs, particularly with schools. And we developed a companion guide to assist with our local government partners in brainstorming and sort of developing creative ideas for how to develop education programs. And there's a project gallery available on our website. Another program we have that can assist with safety is the linkage program. It's our land use and transportation planning program. In every one of our linkage studies, safety is a major consideration. We almost always review the locations for crash data. We look at maybe some site and some street design concepts that might be further reviewed in engineering analysis to address some of those safety issues. We have pilot projects that we've implemented through the linkage program as part of the public involvement phase, but can also be used to address safety. So that's another program that's available, and that's a solicitation goes out annually for the linkage program. A new program that we are partnering with the Capital District Regional Planning Commission on is the Technical Assistance Program, which affords us the opportunity to work with local governments on very small strategic safety planning or other planning initiatives specific to the safety. Things that we can do through this program include crash data analysis. We can look at signal operations, undertake before and after studies of a project, helped with road safety assessments, implementing or reviewing ITS strategy or intelligent transportation system strategies. This program is currently in a rolling solicitation, and a new round will begin after April, pretty much mid-April of 2021. We also have complete streets workshops to really get to the complete streets part of the equation, where there's a biannual solicitation for local governments to host a workshop. They are free to you. We supply the consultant and all of the support. You just have to supply the room and organize the participants. There are 4 workshop types: the basics, which is just what is a complete street and why should you consider implementing a policy. Then there's the policy development type of workshop, how you implement a policy, and then there's also county or region-wide training available through the complete streets workshops. So looking beyond the rest of this year and into the future, things to look forward to. The New York State Department of Transportation is creating a new crash data system that's going to be referred to as CLEAR. The acronym is the Crash Location Engineering and Analysis Repository. This is going to replace the Accident Location Information System. And again, this is available to local government staff, those working in traffic safety, NYSDOT staff. It is not a publicly available resource. The public available resource I'll talk about in a little bit. But this new crash data system will provide more analysis tools and more data analysis right embedded in the application. The basic application will be available sometime this summer, with the analysis tools becoming available towards the end of I'm sorry, those dates should be 2021, not 2020. The other thing that's coming is the New York State Roadway Departure Safety Action Plan, which is in development. The approach to this plan is similar to that of the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, where the state reviewed statewide data on roadway departures. They did focus on the state roads because they didn't have the data to do this for the local system in the plan. We expect this plan to be available late spring, early summer. There is a possibility there could be some highway safety improvement program funding dedicated to implementing some aspects of this plan. And to help our region support and perhaps even gain access to some resources, CDTC staff is going to undertake a systemic analysis for local roads as a pilot project. And we're going to gather the necessary data to determine, to assist with basically the curve data, to assist with the data analysis needed to look at potential countermeasures for roadway departures. And then the state is also going to be updating its statewide strategic highway safety plan late 2021 into 2022. That may lead to updates to some of our approaches at CDTC and some of our plans. That might also tie into and be related to and impacted by what the federal program does. The current FAST Act has expired. We're in an extension period now with a new administration in place at the federal level. We expect there to be a new emphasis on safety and perhaps some changes to how that is approached in the federal program. So some final notes. CDT staff is going to be reviewing the 2020 crash data, and we will be developing and making publicly available some crash data snapshots by county. So that way there's some more tailored information for each of our 4 counties, given the different characteristics. We continue to run safety and work through our Regional Operations and Safety Advisory Committee at CDTC. If you're not familiar with the Cornell Local Roads Program, you should get familiar with them. They offer a lot of assistance with safety for local government members. And if you're interested in accessing public crash data, the Institute for Traffic Safety Management and Research, otherwise known as ITSMR, has what is called the Traffic Safety Statistical Repository, also known as the TSSR. And they have a number of methods, or I should say cleaned crash data available for your review, right down to the municipal level. It doesn't go to street level, but it does give right down to the municipal level a good overview of what's going on your system related to some of the items you're seeing on your screen: speed-related crashes, drug-related crashes, pedestrians, bicyclists, etc. So with that, I will thank you for listening today, and I will turn it back to Jen to wrap up.
Thank you, Sandy. Okay, I'm gonna. Okay, Sandy went through most of the resources and available to local governments and to folks that might be on the webinar today. So we'll just conclude with questions. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A function. Okay, so we have a question from a participant. The COVID data suggests that overbuilt infrastructure, like excess capacity due to reduced traffic volumes, resulted in an increase in speed and fatal injury crashes. Are we creating the same situation when designing roadways and intersections based on a future design year with an assumed growth rate? Is this a practice that we should change?
I can start and maybe Mark can jump in. You know, I think that there's 2 ways to look at that. We had a unique situation to see what would happen if we eliminated a significant amount of traffic from our roadway system. And I think we're still assessing the impacts of that. Certainly looking at an assumed growth rate is challenging, and it shouldn't be the only consideration. I don't know, Mark, did you want to weigh in on that from the DOT perspective?
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out, the impacts of COVID. Obviously, we have real-time traffic data, we would use for, let's say, allowing construction on the highways during the COVID period. But there needs to be some kind of statewide policy as to how we're going to address the existing traffic compared to what happened with COVID. And as we come back, will we come back, higher or lower than what it has been? So I don't think there's an answer to that. I get the assumption from the traffic engineering standpoint is that traffic is essentially going to keep going up, and that's the way that all the let's say guides and manuals are written to address when the traffic impact studies to assume a growth rate, and that's the growth rate is something that I believe that CDTC provides to the public. But I don't know, a good question. More debate is probably.
Yeah, I would agree. And just to follow up on that real quick, I know that we'll be doing some traffic counts this summer at various locations in the capital region to kind of get a sense of where the traffic is at. And it might help us to understand how things have changed, especially now that the state workforce appears to be slowly going back into their offices. You know, as we see more traffic on the roadway with all the deliveries on top of that, we may see a different situation than we're actually expecting to see. So certainly time of day of travel has changed, but I don't know if the amount of travel has changed. It may end up actually that it's gone up.
And related to that, as CDTC continues to collect data and monitor how things recover, we will be doing a chapter update to New Visions to kind of address everything. Because when New Visions 2050 was released, it was just days before the New York State on pause. So we have questioned, you know, whether some of the suggestions in the plan are still relevant, what will recovery look like, and how will that impact long-term planning. So we're definitely monitoring it and looking at it and hoping to, you know, develop a little bit more like resiliency kind of language for the plan to address everything. And there's another question, how important is traffic calming in achieving safety goals?
I'll start off with that. Well, traffic calming, we're not looking at traffic calming on the interstate highways. We're the more of a complete streets type local road. By local road, in my perspective, means that the state highways that go through the various municipalities. When you get into the downtown improvements, yes, traffic calming is, and I mentioned that in the 787 project. The highway design manual, which DOT use as their design guidance, that chapter on traffic calming is currently being rewritten. And when we were looking at the design alternatives for 787, we were kind of searching for ideas, and a lot of that are the ideas that we use, like the speed tables, will be incorporated into the highway design manual chapter on achieving the traffic calming. So yes, I guess it depends on the type of road that we're looking for, but definitely traffic calming is going to be here to stay.
Okay, there are no other questions right now. So thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Mark, for making time to join us today. And we will be uploading this presentation to the CDTC YouTube channel. If you have any questions or would like, again, to request a virtual training on New Visions tailored to your zoning, planning board, town board, city council, please reach out. And you can find the New Visions plan and materials on our website at www.cdtcmpo.org. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.